Essentials. Hope you're having a wonderful morning. This morning I thought I would talk about feminine aspects in the Waldorf curriculum. This sort of came up last week on a couple of groups, and I just wanted to sort of go through and I might ruffle some feathers, and I really don't mean to. I really, there's some things I don't mind ruffling feathers about, but this one, honestly, I don't mind. I'm not, it's not my intent to ruffle feathers. I want you to know that I am a feminist. I have been for a lot of years. And just because my stance on this is what it is, I want you to think about it a bit. So I am the mother of two beautifully strong girls, but I'm also the mother of three very strong young men. And so that's where it sort of makes you take a step back when you're a feminist and you sort of grow up that way, or you spent your early late teens, early 20s that way, and you just were pushing that way, and then you have boys. And so then it makes you reevaluate, not do we think that women should take a lesser role, but it makes you evaluate the fact that you also want your boys to have this great role as well. And so when questions about feminine aspects come up in the curriculum, I usually try to step back and say, okay, talk to me about your reality. Is your reality that you just have one little girl? Is your reality that you were abused, or that you had some major struggles? Or is your reality that you are like a dyed-in-the-wool feminist, and you just want to make sure that you are bringing the strong female aspects of the curriculum to your child? And if that, no matter what the case is, I think it's important to step back and see the big picture. And throughout history, yes, there were times when there weren't a lot of strong female people announced in history, brought forward in history. And it is our job to sort of bring those forward. However, it is not our job to bring those forward at the detriment of the rest of the curriculum. And so I think it's important to think about. And I think we can step back and sort of look at ways, look at ways that the curriculum could support it. So I'm thinking in seventh grade, when we're talking about explorers, there aren't any female explorers, at least not ones that made history books in the way that the other ones did. Not saying that there weren't any, but in the way that the other ones did. So I think it's important to you can look at figures like Sacagawea or Sacagawea, however you want to say that, and look at great things that she did to help explore the United States. Now that's separate. It's sort of a different direction to go because it's after the Renaissance. But if you are really, if you're really anxious about bringing in somebody else like that, you could look at that person. But I would look at it in addition to, after you've done the work on the explorers. In second grade, I would bring in, there's definitely some female saints. Bring in some female saints. Just because we don't have them in our book doesn't mean you can't use them. So, bring some of those in. I also think in second grade, it's important you could bring in great women. You could bring in Clara Barton. You could bring in, there's just a lot. There's a lot you could do. In third grade, I would make sure with those Old Testament stories that you bring in the prophetesses. I think it's really easy to just focus on the prophets. But I think you should totally bring in the prophetesses. If you didn't have Deborah, the prophetess, there's like a whole huge story right there. And Moses and Aaron and their sister, that it's a huge story, and it's an amazing story. And there are other times in history. I would bring in Esther. I would bring in lots of, and I would make a big dang deal about Eve. I think that Eve is such a strong female character. She gets such a bad rap. And if you kind of don't know what I'm talking about, listen to our podcast on the Old Testament for grade 3. We talk about redeeming Eve. And I think it's really important to see her. My own personal belief is that she did a great, brave thing. And it's really easy to see her as, well, why did she make Adam eat the dang apple? We would all be living in the garden, instead of realizing we wouldn't be. That in order to progress, she did the right thing. She stood as the woman that she needed to, as the mother of all living. And so I think it's important to really understand the material that you're bringing to your kids and understand why you're making changes. And if you are like really adamant about making changes, then you really study out why those pieces were there to begin with. You know, what was it that Steiner was trying to bring forward? I think you can very easily balance all of the curriculum. I can't think of one thing that you can't balance. Like I said, the explorers, but then I think it's easy for you to sort of change some things around. I think when you're talking about the life of Christ, I think you can absolutely bring in his mother. You can bring in Mary Magdalene and what she did with his church after he died. You can bring in a lot of that. And you can talk about with the saints. There's a ton of women. And so there's a lot of resources that you can utilize to really balance this out in your head. But again, I also want to just caution you that you're not bringing in them in order to, you don't want to just build up women. You want to, as a mom that has both boys and girls, I want to build up my children, not just my girl children. Yes, my boys will probably have an easier time in life because they're boys. But I also want to raise valiant men that have, that have valor, that are strong. And in order to do that, we have to give them stories of good, strong men. And we have to give them examples of good, strong men. And so, and we need to do that for our girls too. We need to show our girls there are good, strong men in history that were good to women, and that really felt like they embodied sort of this duality, this Adam and Eve duality. We want this. We want to be able to show that to our children so that we can give them a fair and balanced, just sort of sound like a newscast, fair and balanced view of history, and not do it in a way that promotes one over the other. I think it's really important that we put our passions aside and set them aside when we're working with this curriculum, and that we bring forth what it is that the curriculum is laid out for. Now, there might be times that you go, I just can't do that. The curriculum has just got me frustrated, or you don't understand why. So if you're in that spot where you don't understand why, take the time to really dig through Steiner. So ask. If you are confused about where something's at, you want to read the actual source, ask me. Ask on one of the groups. There's a lot of really seasoned Waldorf moms. There's a few Waldorf teachers on most of our groups. So, ask the question, why did Steiner want this? And then step back and ponder. And I think this really goes back to planning. Don't try to be researching the week before you're doing it, because then you're going to be in a frenzy, and then you're going to not feel right about what you're bringing to your kids. So make sure that when you're doing this pondering, you're doing it months before your main lesson block, that that you want to bring these characters or these people into, these historical figures. Don't do it the week before, because you want to have time for that to settle. You want to have time for yourself to sort of meditate on it, and for you to really, just be able to let it sink in. And because oftentimes, if there's been something that's not sat quite well with me, and I've done the research on it, and I let it sit for a while, then my thoughts about it change, and sort of, even if I don't bring it exactly the way it would have been brought, I at least know why I didn't. And so that's what I think is really important. It's important to sort of know why you're doing the things you're doing. So that's really what I wanted to talk about this morning. I know it's not a super sexy topic, but, I think that it's an important one. I think that it's anytime that we seek to change the curriculum, we need to understand sort of what the underpinning pieces are, so that we can recapture that and what we're replacing it with, or so that we can understand why it was there to begin with. So I think that's super important. If you're following the Waldorf way, it's an important thing to be thinking about. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. I know this is a super short video, but I really felt like I needed to tackle this topic a little bit, and I hope that it's helpful to you, that, even if it's not helpful right now, maybe you'll be going down the line and you'll be, wait a minute, there was that time that Melissa did that video. I need to go back and watch that because I want to make sure that I bring this in a balanced way. So again, if you have specific questions about specific time periods that you want some assistance in bringing in some good female characters, so it wouldn't be out of character for the curriculum, please just drop me a note. I think there are plenty of them. I have a good time with them, but I also have a really good time with the valiant men, because I have both children, and I want valiant men and I want strong women in my household and in my lineage, and I know you do too. So if you have questions, drop me a note. Hope you have a wonderful week. Bye now.